Well, hello everyone in the room and to everyone tuning in online to this final, and I should say last but definitely no means least, session and talk show on gamification and whether it's the answer to water agency. And really a question that we want to kind of explore a bit further in this next 25 minutes is gamification, gamifying a very serious issue, is one of the answers to get people to really care about water. So when Victoria first reached out to me about the session, as a gamer for about 30 years and having written about the water industry for about 12 years, I absolutely jumped at the chance because I think this is a topic that I really feel passionate about that can make a difference. So again, thank you to everyone online and for everyone in the room for joining us. So a quick introduction to our speakers. We have Victoria Edwards, who is the co-founder and CEO of FIDO, a UK digital and AI company from the UK. And she's on a mission to help, on a passionate mission and journey to help harness AI for the topic of water loss, which we'll get into. And as well, Callie Stinson, who is a water strategy expert focusing on resiliency, currently from Water Foundry, one of the co-conveners of the session, and formerly with the World Economic Forum, UN Water and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Callie, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So we were going to do a poll today, but I'm told we can't. So in fact, I'm going to go old school and get everyone just to raise their hands. You know, we used to do that before the pandemic. You put your arm in the air, or you can use this one. How many of you in the room actually play games? Wow, okay. Well, I thought probably for everyone tuning in online, that's a good... Sorry, can you do it again, just so I can have a quick count?
It's literally everyone but me.
Literally 80-90% of the room. Okay, so we're not... I thought it was people were going to be a bit more shy about putting their hand forward. So that's really encouraging news. And as we know, gaming is overtaking the film industry as an enormous industry. It's going to be worth about $350 billion per year. I had a look into some of the numbers. I think the Fortnite players, for those of you who have got children who play it, certainly my 11-year-old daughter is a fan. There's about 350 million players worldwide now. So gaming is fun, but we're looking at kind of how to encapsulate that fun around a very serious issue. So the first kind of bit of a curveball question I want to throw to you guys to start with is apathy towards water. You know, we're not talking people in this room, people tuning in online. We know water professionals as a whole, we care, we're passionate about what we do. How do we get people outside of those circles in the Western world where there's a well-run water supply to care about water? And do you think, at the very top level, gamification using games could be one answer?
I think it's very interesting you say a well-run water supply. I think, like me, if you're from the UK, you would probably question that at this particular moment. And I think the topic about SEWI is making seen what is unseen. And I'm a great believer in the democratization of water. And in order for water to be real, not just something that comes out of a tap, you've got to understand its value, you've got to understand the processes, what's technically difficult to get it to your tap so you can have water on demand. And I think that's what we need to look at, is actually giving the community agency about understanding water, because we now all understand it, because those tomatoes that we've been growing are now dying. That swimming pool that we were going to fill up is now gone. You know, people can't get out and play on the golf course. Well, actually, it's more serious than that, because without water, you die. And we need to understand it in that context. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. It's the most precious, most valuable commodity, and also should be the most important industry on the planet.
100%. So you could, just to kind of reflect on that, and I'll come to you, Callie, afterwards, you're saying that gamification can help understand the journey of water, right? So this is part of the communications around where water comes from. You could perhaps say that the previous relationship between supplier and consumer has been a bit transactional.
Yeah, so if you think about it, I mean, you're a water utility company. And actually, let's be really blunt. Nobody comes into the water industry, sits in maths on a Friday afternoon saying, if I pass this test with my algebra, I'm going to work in the water industry. They want to work in Formula One, they want to be a space. And actually, you need to work in water, but it's not vibrant enough. It doesn't connect with the youth as part of our education. And the utility companies only ever have a negative message. Could somebody want to put their hands up and say, when did you last time have a goodwill message from your water supplier? Well done. We won't know if that's through a game, but look how there was one out of nobody else. The normal communication is negative. It's a bill, or you're phoning them because you've got a problem, there's a leak, or you've got sewage running down the street. And actually what we think, gamification for me is just a form of communication that allows for a two-way positive communication if you've got something positive to talk about. It's a way of engaging across intergenerational sectors. So I think that's when the utility companies should look at gamification as a way of having a positive, fun, but informative interaction with their users.
Very good. Callie, can you pick that one up, a positive
Sure. I
interaction
mean,
with
I
users?
would underscore everything Victoria's just said, and I think just to build on one aspect of that, this cross-generational component, the marketing, if you will, of water as a means to overcoming apathy. And I think, we within the water community or the sector, as we, like to describe ourselves, it's a theme we talk about often. How do we make people care? I think one of the opportunities with this topic is really looking at how we can kind of broaden the tent of the community, bringing in people with new perspectives, new talent. I mean, you raised a point, or I think in reference to the workforce. How are we diversifying the perspectives, the skill sets, the age, the backgrounds of the people that work on water? And, gamification offering and creating new games offering, I think, really exciting opportunities to bring new voices into the community and for us to be thinking in a slightly more evolved and disrupted way than perhaps we have in the past. And I think, overcoming apathy is a challenge that we talk about at this conference and many others that we go to time and time again. And there's an inertia, I think, that we're all struggling with. And one of the aspects of overcoming that, I think, is looking how do we change that up from the inside and also from the outside. And I think this topic is a great avenue to start discussing that.
I think you're right, and I think what gamification I think does is the water industry and the problem we're facing day zero, the day we're running out of water, and everybody can coalesce around climate change. But actually, there was an opening remark somebody made was great. If climate change is the shark, then water is the teeth. There's nothing for the water industry or people who are talking about water to coalesce around. Gamification, I believe, is a way to do that because it's a talking point, it's a central point, it's a way of imparting information about water, seeing its value, giving community agency, giving us that two-level communication and understanding how vitally important it is. And I think it's not just about having fun, it's about actually creating something, a community that we belong to that's global for once instead of disparate.
100%. So we've mentioned that word gamification quite a lot, and I think it's always good to perhaps give a practical example of that. And we were hoping to share a video, but you have water. I did share it on my social media beforehand, but there's a great example I'd really recommend anyone check out called Water Battle, and it's a collaboration between a sort of Dutch computer game startup and a Dutch utility called Vittens. And this game is, imagine like the kind of the Super Mario World type format, but actually the data from the customer's smart water meter feeds into the game. The parents are using too much water, the game is flooded, the children can't progress. The household reduces their water consumption, suddenly the water levels go down. And this plays on something wonderful that I've written on in the past called Pest to Power. Do not underestimate the power of children to kind of persuade and influence their parents' behavior, right? So this is based on real-time consumption data. It's an interactive game. It taps into what both of you said about encouraging younger generations to kind of really get into water. So could you maybe sort of comment on that as an example? I know we've all had a look at it beforehand and how that could maybe be done again. And then we'll talk a bit about your challenges and then scaling up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you want to take that one?
Maybe to kick off, again, it's a really exciting example to Tom's point, and I think for me, what was so interesting, getting to learn about this particular game is just the way that they're approaching education is so multifaceted, right? And the behavior change is sort of just this byproduct, of it's almost this sneakiness, right? Of creating a game that's quite clever, it's quite fun. It's, connecting, again, the household users of water to be thinking about something and changing their behavior on a day-to-day basis, as a means to another end. And I think those are the types of kind of, the Trojan horse approach to getting people to care about water that is really interesting, and it's a super example, and I hope we can see more.
And I think the EA in the UK have done a very good job with Rivercraft and looking about flooding, and that's an educational tool. And I think it's great, but I think it's just the first step. Because actually it's not about education, it's not only about education, it's about giving the community agency. Because water is a right for everybody. It's not owned by anybody. And I think gamification can be a way of helping community feel as if they have agency and ownership over what is the most vital resource for us for life. And I think that's something that we could and should be and are looking to explore.
Yeah, and accountability too. Yeah. I mean, to build on that, we were discussing that before the session. I mean, there's certainly a sense of awareness and with that, ownership. But I think that citizen connection to, utility providers, public sector, that sort of implied sense of accountability becomes a little bit more opened up as well as we start to.
In fact, what gamification does, one, it's a great leveler. Unless you're like me and you only play solitaire Scrabble, and I'd never get past one on Pac-Man. I'm from that generation. But it is a great leveler, but it's also a great honesty provider, isn't it? Because there's nowhere to hide. If you get the games right, that gives a community agency, gives the community knowledge about things they have difficulty getting knowledge about. And in the water industry, we talk about siloed data, don't we? We talk about data not being shared between companies or innovators or governments. And we said, actually, how do we break that down? How do we actually get back to the real source that water is a right for everyone? And I think you've got to know what's happening in your local community in order to do that. And then that's why I think gamification is very exciting from a fun point of view and a community point of view, but also from a laying bare what could be an uncomfortable truth. So.
We will pick that apart later on. But you did mention the Rivercraft example, and I think it's just worth unpacking that a little bit. It's the Environment Agency, the regulator in the UK. They've taken one flood resiliency project, and they've basically used AI to map that as a level in Minecraft. To basically, and one of the purposes was to try and encourage schools, young professionals to look at it in terms of flood resiliency. And actually as a future profession. But my question on any of these things is scalability. Like, it's okay doing it as a one-off with one-off partnership, but actually how do you kind of scale that across a country, across a continent? So it's not just a kind of one-off example. I know that may be opening a tin of worms.
It is, because you're getting me onto my soapbox against innovation and adoption, and how adoption actually is equally, if not more important than the innovation, and why that doesn't always happen or effectively. But in terms of scalability, I think it's citizen science at its best. You may have seen in the UK the sewage and the surfers going, and actually it becomes a life of its own. And I think that's what you want it to be, is that it becomes global because of its nature of what it's giving everybody. They're getting a feeling of ownership, and there's an excitement of being involved. Of course, there's a competitive edge. I mean, people don't play games. You go and knit a scarf if you don't want to be competitive. You play games to be competitive, and you learn. And I think, so in terms of scalability, you've got to have the right, because I'm failed at things like that, you've got to have the right infrastructure and technology to be able to do it. But then I think it breeds a life of its own. I think it becomes that movement that you...
This is not to discredit scarf knitters, because I'm sure there are a few competitions on that probably. Yeah. But it's something you think, why do people come back time and time again? We talked about the 350 million Fortnite players that's growing. It's because it's competitive, and there's a repeatability around that, right? So you mentioned the phrase Trojan horse in terms of the messaging and the gaming. That kind of repeatability has to be a big part of the scalability, right? Yeah. People have to want to, you can't just develop a game and say, here, use it. It has to travel by its own success to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think getting, non-traditional actors, spokespeople, thinking about creatively, how do we engage different audiences to help these things grow? But I mean, completely, the taking on a life of its own, I think, that's what we can only hope for in some of these examples, that they continue to grow, continue to reach the scale that we want to see. I think if we zoom out a little bit, having said that, when we talk about scalability, I mean, I would be remiss not to mention a theme that we have talked about basically all week here, which is the importance of partnerships too. I mean, we're seeing these pockets of innovation, really exciting examples, but that's often in a one-to-one context. And I think one of the ingredients in the secret sauce of getting these things to be explosive and to really reach the scale we want to see is having robust partnerships in place that can help replicate and scale. So if we do something, interesting, whether it's in a city context or one, municipality, for example, how do we have robust, public-private partnerships in place that can help these ideas then be tried elsewhere? We have to experiment, and we have to have the ability to capitalize on our wins and move fast when we start to get stuff right. And I think that's one of the challenges that we'll see.
And how, in Gabe, do you keep it fresh and relevant? And because that must be a challenge, and there's great experts outside our industry. And I'm a big believer in saying, let's be honest about what we don't know and what we don't have the skills to do in this industry.
Sure.
And let's bring experts in and people in from outside to help us. Let's listen to the communities we're talking to, because every place is different. And it's just saying, actually, we think it's a great idea, but we need those partnerships to really make it fly. Let's not try and reinvent the wheel. Let's work together. Let's get some interesting gamers. I see the chairs. So my AI team all wanted gaming chairs. I'm not a gamer. Well, I thought, a few £100 or euros or dollars. No. Gaming chairs are serious business. I mean, can be an all-consuming part of their life, and we need to capture that enthusiasm and have people that have used it. We should be getting behavioural scientists to say, and actually, what makes a game sticky? Why do people want to come back? Let's not just say, well, we've got a bit of data, so we'll just shove it out there and we'll put a pretty picture on the front and we'll say we've done gamification. Tick, we've done that for water. Now what we're going to do for water? We do need to, don't we, have that partnerships with experts outside the industry to really make this fly.
We need unusual partnerships, and even perhaps innovative business models, because the question is who's going to pay.
Yeah,
I think with any new development, right? So, but Victoria, you're actually developing a kind of on this journey yourself, so you can talk
firsthand.
But I mean, in terms of the partnerships you're looking at, and actually, where do you even go developing that game to raise awareness?
Well, we're very new at FIDO to the water industry, and we've met some great people. So I'm working with Will Sarney at the Water Foundry, and with Project WET, who are a great charity and global organisation about education about water. And we have a very simple premise at FIDO. We want to save the planet a megalitre at a time, but we want to involve the community to do it. So we thought, actually, what do people do? We see our young AI developers going out and playing geocaching or Pokemon Go. And what we're saying is we're open data, completely believe you've got to be. You can't have a big global crisis challenge and be proprietary, and I'm not talking to you and you're not talking to us. And we said, actually, we want the community to have agency and help us collect data about where leaks are. So we will deploy lots of little sensors on the network, little FIDO bugs, and you go geocaching. A bit like, will I get in trouble for saying this, Pokemon Go? Sorry, but we'll come and talk to you, because we need experts. And we say, actually, you can be walking to your playing field or going to the supermarket, and you've got a little FIDO app, and it'll pop up and say, well done, you found a leak, and it's a big leak. And it sends that audio data that the AI's done, but it sends that data to your utility company. So you can get maybe we could get the community says, actually, every time we find one, we want to give a water credit to a water-starved area, or we want shirts for the local football team. It's up to you. It's the community's power. And then the utility has a positive communication with you, because it can say, thank you for finding it. We're coming to repair it. Guess what? We've repaired it. We've saved this much water. Do you know how much this has helped the environment? You are a super water warrior. And it's that type of, and that is not community buying the game. This is not about it. This is about giving the community agency and saying to the utility company, could be uncomfortable because they might find a lot of leaks. But at least we found them, and then we can have a conversation, that water company, with the community and say, look, we found a lot of leaks. Where do you think are the important ones to fix? Well, let's fix the large ones, because we know if it's a large one or a small one. And it just gives power to everybody. It makes them realise the value of water. And I think once you've done that, it's a bit Pandora's box, though. I might get shot down. I may be because we are lifting the lid on what has been totally unseen to the community that is the consumer. And I hope it's met in the spirit that it's meant to meet, which is about making everybody feel responsible and somehow accountable for the water they've got.
Just to kind of play the devil's advocate on that one, because I think that's why you brought me for this.
Yeah, I know you do well. I should have had you.
One of the key, perhaps, bottlenecks to that is going to literally be the Pandora's box analogy, right? Because you're democratizing access to this game. People can go hunting for leaks.
Yeah.
And it's perhaps going to, you use the Al Gore reference, the inconvenient truth.
Yeah.
So have you had any feedback like that from water companies, or do you think that's a potential kind of blocker in this vision you have?
We work with some great utility companies. We're only here because we won a place on United Utilities Innovation Lab, which let us fail so many times. We've got a company in New Zealand. We're looking for really a water-starved community, somewhere we can really go and test it out and try it. And do you know what? I'm going to say something that I probably shouldn't say. Isn't it about time that sometimes an uncomfortable truth is only an uncomfortable truth if you then do nothing about it? Mm-hmm. So I'm not making any apologies about it. I think we should have a grown-up conversation about water. It is difficult to find leaks. It is difficult to make sure everybody's got water. But let's have an open conversation about the difficulties. Let's involve the community and let's solve the problem. It's the cheapest source of water is leakage, fixing them. And we are running out. We are facing day zero. Bit of uncomfortable, inconvenient truth is about time.
100%. I mean, you referenced the UK kind of sewage issue and what if anyone's seen it, the Surfers Against Sewage app that can show you where there's been a kind of discharge of untreated water. And it made headlines recently, kind of after the recent downpours. And I put a picture on my social of paddleboarding prior and everything was green and beautiful and ticks. And then after the downpour, there were quite a few red crosses. But in terms of driving that, before the citizen science of going out and taking water samples, actually it's quite a powerful thing in terms of empowering people on that data. So, but
it shouldn't be a blame game, should it? That's the whole point. It's about saying, actually, we're just laying bare and let's work together. And I think that it's all right for having an app to report problems. I think it doesn't go far enough. And I think it needs to be something that has solutions and with community-based decisions as well. And I think that's where gamification comes in, because it says, actually, we're all learning. We're getting things that, I mean, some utility companies are so inventive and try so hard. Yeah. This is just another tool for them that includes the community in it, because it's very easy for people to stand up and beat utilities with a stick when it's hot and you're dry, and actually they don't understand what they've been trying to do, and actually saying, but the community now can see the size of the problem. There is accountability, yes, but you can have a grown-up two-way conversation, and hopefully a positive one, about how you're going to stop us running out of water.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's all, what we're all kind of getting at is the importance of these types of exercises being participatory, right? That they're not antagonistic, they're not imposed upon a local municipality to shine a light on failures, but that, we find a way to creatively tackle, Will, my colleague, is always talking about wicked water problems, right? We're finding new ways to tackle the same old problems. And I think this is a great example and opportunity, of these types of pilots for these ideas like FIDOs. Where can we pull together, of course, your citizen scientists and the willing public sector partners to just experiment and take that risk and have that safe sort of playpen to see how it goes, right? And there are going to be learnings and hopefully iterations at every stage in that process to get it right. But I think one of the exciting and insightful attitudes that FIDO is really, from what you've told me, bringing to this exercise and kind of campaign that you're working on is something that is collaborative from the outset.
Has to be. It has to be. We are just years away from running out of water.
So, I mean, we've talked some examples then in terms of on the household water consumption through to leakage, even to, say, climate resiliency with the Environment Agency. But maybe coming to you, kind of, Callie, where else do you think, when it comes, obviously with your broad experience, could be gamified? Are there areas to sort of encourage interaction?
Oh, gosh. Within water?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every step of the water cycle, every aspect of SDG 6. I mean, of course, there's a great opportunity in the kind of urban water resilience space. And I think this is a great example, water use efficiency, reuse, helping people kind of quantify and have the tangibility of water use is something that we just, I think, are still struggling with to make that visible and internalized. But I mean, you think about what that could look like in consumer choice as well, supply chains, transparency, traceability of the products that we are using, buying, consuming, and really understanding and leveling up our interactions and how we're spending our money, I think is the highest level of that.
Yeah, and absolutely, and using that to say, actually, we've one of the things I think there's some wonderful projects, and one is how you recharge aquifers and what do you do, and you see those. I think Open ET are doing some great work with NASA and the universities and really big collaborations to say we're going to give open data so the crop growers know how to value the water, how to get the maximum efficiency out of it. And actually, I would like to know that as a consumer. They're trying really hard. They are trying really hard. Wouldn't that be great to say, actually, I can feel really good about myself. You know, I understand the water that I've got in my community. I understand the things that I'm buying and the effect that it has on the planet. And I know that we're all taking collective responsibility for managing what's the most precious resource on Earth.
When I look at this through a sort of communication, creative sort of marketing lens, I think it's an incredibly potentially powerful tool to help communicate these very, very complicated issues as well. So I have been given the signal from the AV team in the corner. I think that means our time is up. So I want to thank you, Callie. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
For our audience online and everyone in the room, hopefully a fruitful discussion on gamification, some great examples, and I think certainly food for thought on the potential applications and where this can go. So thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.